My name is Patty Brennan, and I'm a behavioral ecologist slash evolutionary biology at UMass Amherst. I'm a research professor, and I've been really interested in studying sexual selection and sexual conflict for a while. I was really in love with being a field biologist, and that seemed like something that I could do easily, just go in the forest instead of going to the ocean and just look for birds. And so I started learning more and reading more about birds, and I ended up doing my PhD with birds. I took the big Birds of Colombia book, and I opened it up, and the first family is family Tinamity, which is tinamous, and they're these, kind of fat little ground birds that run around in the forest. The males are the ones who do the parental care, and they incubate the eggs. They have amazing, beautiful color eggs. We don't know very much about them because nobody studies them. And so I went, oh, perfect, tinamous, that's what I'm going to do. I was watching the tinamous mating one day, and the female sort of crouches on the ground, and she makes these funny little noises. It's like, when females are receptive. And the male comes up, and he gets on top of her, and he starts threading on top of her, and then they copulate. And this is usually what happens with a lot of birds. But when the male was doing this, I was like, oh, look how exciting, they're copulating. But then he got up, and when they separated, there was this weird thing hanging off his cloaca. And it took me a while to actually realize that it was a penis that I was looking at. And I also realized that I had never read anything or heard anything on all my readings about the fact that birds actually had penises. So I started thinking about a project that would let me look at these weird penises in a little more detail. And so that was my postdoctoral proposal. When I went to University of Sheffield, where I did part of my postdoc working with Professor Tim Burkett, I needed something to practice on. And so we said, okay, well, at that time, I still had the thought that maybe I would do tinamous. But we just went to some local farms and got some duck specimens to dissect and work on. And after I saw my first duck, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What is going on with these penises? They were just so bizarre, and they look like nasty tentacles, and they're just weird. There's just no other way to describe it. And I thought, how is it that nobody knows about this? Why isn't everybody talking about crazy bird penises? So this is the thing that's really cool about genitalia, is that genitalia have to fit. Male and female genitalia have to fit somewhat, right? So when you have this really crazy, elaborate male genitalia, then that tells you that there's got to be something going on the female side of things as well. Because the way we understand these interactions between males and females, we know that they have to co-evolve. These structures have to co-evolve. They have to go hand in hand. And what happens when the sexes are involved in these evolutionary arms races, where the males have evolved a trait that allowed them to manipulate the outcome of reproduction to their advantage. And the females, of course, they have something to say about that because they don't like that, right? And so they have then evolved a counter-adaptation to prevent males from getting away with this manipulation. And the ducks are just an absolutely clear example of how this actually happens. And so what happens in the ducks is that they form pair bonds. Sure. So the male and the female will stay together throughout the winter, and then migrate together, and then in the spring, they'll get to the breeding site. And then they'll breed, and the female will lay eggs, and then the male will be gone. But they spend many, many months together, solidifying this pair bond. But what happens is that there are always more male ducks than female ducks. And this has to do with their ecology. Females basically die more. They have higher mortality. So there are always extra male ducks. What are these males to do? Well, some of them, just never reproduce. But some of them actually go to the breeding grounds, even though they don't have a partner, and they look around for females that are in reproductive condition so that they can coerce them to copulate. So they force copulations on these females. Now the females have already spent all this time and effort pair bonding with some other guy, presumably because he's better, because they go through a very elaborate choice. So they choose this guy for whatever reason, and then these guys are coming in and they're forcing copulations on the females. So it turns out oftentimes there are groups of males who are doing this, and it's hard for the females to get away. Like they just, they try, they fly away, they hide under the vegetation, they do all sorts of things. But oftentimes they're overpowered by the males. So what can they do? At that point, when you see that a female is being coerced by a group of 10 males and her mate is just off to the side, unable to do anything, you might be tempted to conclude that, oh well, tough luck for the female, she just lost. She tried to avoid these males, from gaining any fertilizations, but evidently they're able to mate, so, she's out of luck. And it turns out it's not like that at all. So the females have actually evolved these really convoluted vaginas that when these males are forcing her to copulate, these structures in the vagina that are like blind pouches at the entrance of the vagina, and then followed by a series of spirals that spiral in the opposite direction than the male penis spirals. These are real barriers that actually make the male penis not being able to fully evert into her oviduct. And what that means is that the male, the males can still ejaculate, but because birds have an external sperm channel rather than an internal sperm channel, the sperm all come out closer to the entrance of the cloaca of the female, where then she can much more easily either eject them and get rid of them, or where it is so much farther from the sites where the eggs are fertilized that the chances that the sperm from those unwanted males will make it are very, very slim. So basically the females have really evolved this amazing adaptation to regain control of their reproductive decisions. And it's a really amazing example of how that actually happens.